Morning, everyone. Michael and the volunteers here. Welcome to this morning's meditation practice. Anyone here for the first time? Welcome. Glad y'all made it today. We have a few announcements before we get started. If you haven't already, remember to silence your cell phones, put them away so you can be fully present for the talk and the meditation. If you must use your phone, please do so outside the meditation hall. We invite you to go join Geshe Lobsang Tenzin La for our weekly medicine Buddha practice in person and online at 6 p.m. on Tuesdays. This week, for our Tuesday evening public talk at 7 p.m., Geshe Lobsang La will speak on 8 verses of Training the Mind, verse 8. Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m., the Drepung Loseling monks conduct evening prayers for His Holiness the Dalai Lama's long life and for other teachers. On Thursdays at 4:30 p.m., the Drepung Loseling monks conduct the Protector Puja for smooth journeys, successive interviews, medical treatments, new business, etc. The monks will offer a traditional filling of statues and stupas, followed by a sacred consecration ceremony in person and via our streaming channels on Tuesday, December 9th at 6:30 p.m. We invite you to drop off or ship your statues and stupas used for personal devotion and practice to be filled and consecrated by the monks. We also have a limited selection available in the gift shop. Statue drop-off and ship receiving deadline is Tuesday, December 2nd. The Venerable Monks of Drepung Loseling Monastery and the Mystical Arts of Tibet Tour will be performing 2 powerful ceremonial healing pujas. On November 25th, Medicine Buddha Puja for physical and mental health and well-being, and on December 2nd, a Green Tara Puja for protection, healing, and prosperity. You're invited to submit names for those not present. On December 14th at 5 p.m., we will commemorate the anniversary of the parinirvana of Lama J. Tsongkhapa. The Venerable Monks will lead a Guru Puja sock offering, featuring offerings of fruits, cakes, baked goods, juices, flowers, and candles. If you wish to bring a personal offering, please arrive by 4:30 p.m. to allow time for placement and arrangement on the altar. Our annual year-end retreat with Geshe Pende La will be held on Freedom from the Four Attachments, an in-depth exploration on the obstacles to spiritual practice and the path to genuine freedom, from December 27th through the 30th. It will consist of 3 sessions each day and is open to all. It's free for current members. As a reminder, please do not park on the grass along the driveway or behind the building. If the lot's full, overflow parking can be found via Skyland Drive at John Lewis Elementary School. Only access to school parking via Skyland Drive and walk down the hill to our site. Information on all events can be found in the lobby and on our website at drepung.org. If you're interested in becoming a member to support our ongoing programs and take advantage of benefits like discounts on courses and retreats, applications are available in the library. You can also register online. There's a donation box near the entrance to this room. Your generous support helps us to continue to offer programs and services like this to our Atlanta community and to those around the world through our online platforms. Now, if you would please stand as we welcome our teacher, Geshe Lobsang La, to come in for today's practice.
Good morning. How is everyone doing? Decent. Okay. That's good. Well, welcome to the meditation. What would you like to meditate on today? Any wish? Peace. Okay. Personal to the world, all levels. Peace is good. Compassion. Loving kindness. Compassion, loving kindness, yes. Breathing. Wonderful. Okay. Any other wishes? freedom. Okay. Let's put everything on the list. What else? Self-compassion. Wow. That's good. Healing. Forgiveness. Wow. We need all of that, don't we? Yes. So how do we do that? How do we meditate on peace, on forgiveness, self-compassion, loving-kindness, compassion, breathing? How do we do that? Freedom. Of course, all these are what we desire, we wish for us, and for those around us. Meaning the community, the society where we want to see the greater compassion, greater forgiveness. We don't want to live in a society where there's very little forgiveness, no compassion, no loving kindness, no peace, right? But it is these days. It has always been to some degree, but these days it seems like even more critical, the more needed, as the kind of the divided world that we are living. It seems even more critical. So how do we go about promoting, all these goals that we just talked about, like that? I think there are specific ways to doing this. Each one, specific, the forgiveness, understanding what is the process for going through forgiveness. What is the way to have greater compassion for oneself, for compassion for others? Freedom from, the certain negativities. How do we find freedom from certain emotional turmoils or other, we're not just talking about the freedom from somebody causing us harm. That also is true. How do we go about that? But for one way to create a society that is more harmonious, peaceful, and like that. Another way is that if we are struggling, how do we free ourselves from our inner turmoils and like that, like that. So it's a meditation. When we think about the meditation, we need to think in a really broad way. But at the center of that is need to understand as well of training. The training ourselves, our minds. That how do we go about? So maybe this one practice that I hope that this will in some ways can address the things that we talked about, the goals that we put it out. And that has to do with it. It comes with this understanding that our mind, how we think, our attitudes and our perspectives, they have a lot to do with all this: peace, freedom, forgiveness, compassion, happiness, healing, all of this that with the mind. Our own mind has to do a lot with this. If we can find a way to engage our mind in certain ways, this can promote all these goals. If we engage in another way, it can compromise all these goals. So let me just share this metaphor that Shantideva, one of the great psychologists, spiritual psychologists of all time, Shantideva, he lived in the 8th century AD in India, in Nalanda University. He presents a metaphor of mind as elephant as metaphor of our mind. Elephant, actually, this, yeah. So he said that our mind is like a mighty elephant. When it is unsubdued, untrained, that it can cause a lot of havoc. When it is trained, it can be the most serviceable, an elephant. In the Asian countries, they do train elephants to, before the big machines and like that, for a lot of the heavy lifting of the heavy objects and like that, and like that. But a wild elephant is powerful. It can cause a lot of damage. But when the elephant is trained, they do all kinds of things, like that. They are the most gentle, also most powerful, that to do things, carrying things, pulling things, but also most gentle. These two don't need to be kind of contradictory. That in fact the strength and the gentleness can complement each other really well. Often you can see the people who are most confident, they can also be very gentle. They don't need to pretend that I'm strong, like that. right? Yes, that often, not always all time, often the great leaders also showed a lot of humility, a lot of gentleness. That in fact, that when you think about one quality that makes anyone who is a real leader, the most important quality is gentleness, kindness, compassion. That comes. Most good the quality. What do you also seek in your partner? Beauty, money. What do we seek in the partner that we want to live whole life together? One thing, if that arises, what is that? Do we want to have our home be like a hell? Or do we want to have our home that is heaven, peaceful, joy? The coming home after a long day is a joy to be, that you have your spouse, your children, other. Or do we want to go into a battlefield? Home becomes a battlefield, Of course not. That gentleness, kindness, compassion that that we have for each other. That of course, it becomes a place that we want to be. So same thing, that do we want to be working under a boss that's really judgmental, always, looking over your shoulders and judging, and then mean, or someone who is kind, compassionate, who can understand if now and then you made some mistakes, if now and then you've, fell short on your goals, that they understand. What kind of leadership? What kind of, leader we want? at home or at workplace or in our society. What kind of leader do we want in our society right now? We do want a kind, compassionate leader, right? For all those things, peace. If the leadership is not kind and compassionate and forgiving and understanding and like that, it can create all the chaos. Peace, freedom, all those things can out the window. That can go. So that's why when we think about our own role, it comes down to our mind. How do we engage? So if we engage with kind of cruel, judgmental, like the hatred out of greed and like that, of course, despite our wish to be happy, to have peace and all those things, we will destroy that in us and around us, at home and at work. And so the Shantideva says that, like the ordinary elephant, as mighty as may be, it will not, cause that much damage to us as our own mind. But our own mind is also the source of the greatest, happiness, peace, the well-being. No amount of external fixing can, if we remain internally in conflict, internally, confused, internally caught in this, raging fires of hatred, anger, the selfishness and like that. No amount of external kind of fixing will fill our hearts with that sense of joy, sense of peace, the freedom like that. So meditation is about how we tap into our own inner resources. How do we nourish those elements that promote the greater well-being? How do we mitigate the elements that interfere with our well-being, the peace and like that? And then for that, it's not just wishing, it's about having a pathway to do that. How do we go about doing that? So to do that, I think that it's important to understand, first a little bit of mechanism underlying how when do we get in the emotional or the attitudes, mental states that are unhealthy. That is important to get into that. So another of this ancient master called Vasubandhu in Abhidharmakosha, the Treasury of Knowledge, is a text written in 5th century, 5th, 6th century. He presents this Tagya Pamba Mayana Yuni Nyavarnebata Tsushin Mayi Yishile Nyumugyuni Tsawa. He said, when the conditions for our inner turmoil are present, what kind of conditions, lead to this inner turmoil, emotional turmoil, and like that? It says that number one, Taigepamba Mayana, when the dispositions are there, mental, emotional dispositions for like selfishness, anger, fear, jealousy, and so forth are there. That. When the possible triggers for this are in the proximity. Tsushimayi says that if we engage Tsushimayi, if they engage in the distorted, improper way, then all the conditions are present for this emotional turmoil to unfold. So let me give you an example, concrete example. just taking, we can apply to any of the such emotional states that can be, that we want to mitigate, that we want to transform. We can apply to anyone. But let's take, the one example, like say that a strong craving for feeling high from drugs. Let's take, for example, if someone, so let's say addiction, to get in addiction, for example, whether it's alcoholism or any other drugs, that how many lives are destroyed by that today, right? And it's not like the people take those drugs, they said, oh, okay, I will take this to just have do something really wonderful and have peace and freedom and joy, and it's often when someone is struggling, we want it interferes our functioning, our relationship, our quality of life. We want to get rid of this, but unable to get rid of it, unable to overcome that craving. So many people who are struggling with that, like that. Maybe in the beginning, that naively took that, oh, what is that? But then when this gets addiction, that it's because it interferes our life. So people want to become freedom from addiction and like that. But then, unable to do that. Oftentimes hard, it's difficult. So, how do we get into that state to begin with, addiction like that? First of all, if we do have the dispositions for addiction, like that, and the evolution says that actually that that we all have something that is pleasant, our brains crave more, like that. That's how. It's part of this, come down to the basic brain mechanism, brain evolution, like that. That's something that is unpleasant. We want to move our hand either from the burning stove and like that. Something that's pleasant, brain craves. The reward systems, kind of gets activated. We want more. Those dispositions are there. Something that that feels good, pleasant, even though it may be for a few moments, that pleasant sensation, pleasant feelings, we want, so those dispositions are there, that maybe not at the same level for everyone. Some people that who may have, inherited this disposition in much more on the genetic level, much more from the parents and like that, so when the dispositions are there, it's like time bomb, like that. It's there. What it needs, for one to get just in that, wanting more and more, the hook to that, the craving to become really kind of fixated to that. Another part, a condition is the possible triggers for that want. So if if I'm an alcoholic, I have a disposition for alcoholism, like that, and then alcohol is around there, everybody is drinking, and then even like that, they're not maybe drinking, and I'm just in the corner and I'm hear this sound of ice cube hitting the glass, like that. That itself can be enough to trigger want, right? Like that. So the triggers in the proximity, having the triggers in the proximity is second condition. Having the disposition and the alcohol around there, is that enough for me to get, uncontrollable impulse to reach out? No, not necessarily. People who are recovering, people who, don't have that strong kind of addiction, you can have that. You don't have to have uncontrollable controllable impulse to want, like that. Right? Is that true? Yeah, plenty of us, like that. But what leads to that impulse to want, in that with those two conditions present, is the third condition that is the most important part to keep in mind. It's the engaging, our engagement, attention, in inappropriate engagement. Engagement, not like physically, I'm talking about perception, that how we engage. Oh, this is that wonderful thing. That is. We project, we impose, we, judge. This is that joyous thing there. Often unconsciously, that people who are struggling, it's not like that, consciously that, oh, this is really wonderful. It is automatic. It is, fast, unconsciously, that projection, that judging this is that wonderful thing that happens, that when those three are present, then the impulse for want is there. All conditions are present. This is actually that, like the emotion scientist like Paul Ekman, he talks the same thing, where he says that if events don't literally trigger emotions, events, like the having alcohol or the hearing the sound of by itself doesn't trigger. We often said, oh, someone triggered me, like that, made me angry and like that. This thing triggered, my addiction. It's in the real sense, no. These are possible triggers, yes, objects. Paul Ekman says that events don't literally trigger emotions. It is our appraisal. That's judging how we see it. This is that wonderful thing, that appraising this is good, bad, that's appraising. Appraising as good, that's without which my life is nothing, like that kind of emotional. Appraising this is a threat, it will annihilate me, that emotionally like that. Those are the appraisals that then make those conditions become the trigger for our impulses, emotions, So this is true of addiction, this is true of anger, this is true of fear, this is true of jealousy, greed, everything, that you can see. We have, yes, of course we have dispositions for all this. We have evolved, that from long line of this evolution that we had to, our ancestors had to self-protect, they have to in-group and out-group biases and all those things that they had to do, go through that. And those dispositions are there. So to what extent now in our lives that where it is appropriate, what is not appropriate. It's hard often for us to maintain that balance, the boundary, because dispositions are there, and then we are also, the disposition to judge in the black and white. That this is good, this is bad, this is life, this is death. That black and white. And often these kind of the judgments come in that, in the kind of sweeping ways, like the kind of this black and white thinking, these absolute terms, that good, bad, forever, no, never, things like that. These are something, in some circles they call the thinking traps. Thinking traps, the things like the stereotyping and like that. You see it, a certain person walking, maybe that with a hoodie and like that. Oh, this must be thief, like that. Or the certain person with a certain color of the skin, things that we can project, in today's world and like that. these are, this is like a real kind of the issue, that is that we are all good people, but we have these deep dispositions and the habits and the certain, and if we civilization, the education, and the civilized, the society, throughout, that first in our families, the parents tell us, don't do that, don't hit your sister, and like that, and all those things. We get, taught, developed, and that throughout the civilization that we are doing it. But these positions are quite deep. And then as our societies become more complex, life becomes more complex, that there's so little time for us, that we are always rushed and, like that. It's very hard to not have those kind of unconscious biases, unconscious disposition to project and like that come to play. So that's why that the emotions are so fast. Often we are not even aware, that often we are only become aware that when we have already expressed in our speech or in our action or like that. Too late, by then. So you see that if we can understand this, how this happens, then we can see that, one of the things, if we want to have this full-scale well-being, not overnight, the little by little, for whether it's the freedom, the happiness, self-compassion, forgiveness, all those things, if we want to develop little by little in us and for others, we need to find a way to, of the three conditions I mentioned, where would you work first? Where would be the easiest one to work? Deep disposition, you can tell that somebody is struggling with the, certain addiction, to say that, okay, go some place and then change all your genetic program, or the psychological, dispositions are deep. They say, can we tell them that we have to do to some extent, of course, but can we say that, you forever be away from all the things that make you, want? Yes, temporary measures we do need to kind of, that's why we go into rehabs, and then they're aware that, tell you not to have anything, of that can trigger, like that. But at the end, it's the person who has to, that you can keep somebody in the rehab for 1 month, 3 months, a year, they come back, they can relapse right away. You have to do something to change inside. And that's, so, like that's one of the things that you have to do is how to help someone. Again, there's not one way, that there are many things that can help. But one of the things, awareness is very important. That as you're having the impulse, to have the awareness, and there, if you can find a way to not project that this is wonderful, that if there's you have some way to kind of step back with the awareness that I'm feeling this impulse, but create a little pause, space, like that. Maybe expand that space. Then in that you have the, you can go away. You can do some gardening, take a walk, or just do other things, or to bring some other perspective, repress, that what's happening, and like that. Initial creating that space is very, very important. That's what Viktor Frankl taught, right? Between the stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our choice. We can build the choice. And in that choice is our freedom and growth, that we can. So how do we create that space? that it's a not keep putting this is really wonderful, to keep, that's the judging part, judgment, improper engagement. This is like a wind, like that. If we can't really demand that I need to, when I'm around this, I can't have this judging unfold, because that's unconsciously happening. We're so accustomed to this, it's so deep, that's what the psychologists are saying also, besides contemplative psychologists. But the moment that we notice to leading to that kind of to reaching out and kind of, drinking this thing, is there a little impulse control that can come? That where would that come? That if you don't have that space, you can't have that. So the moment that you can notice, is there a way to not fuel that, not, fan that impulse like a little spark, not fan it with further projections that can make this big flame, like that. But rather notice it without, at that point, that when you are consciously aware of the certain impulses and like that, to notice and step back, just to not bringing further projection that this is really good, that time this was really good. Oh yes, I'm just really feeling bad, this would make you good like that. But just creating that pause, the space, where we can have some, other perspectives or disengage, to put a brake on our judging, projection part. That's what, if we can do that, if we can kind of expand that capacity, we can, that can apply into all kinds of our attitudes, emotions that often gets us in trouble, that often ruin our peace, not, like that. Whether it's, anger at someone or anger at oneself, that hate on oneself, blame on oneself, like the you are idiot, you are nothing, you are loser, and all those things that leading to the depression and all those things, and like that. Whether it's that somebody else is just mean and then evil and like that, just simply, they look different way. They may have certain political ideology, religious ideology, skin color, or whatever it is, like that. If we let this unconscious biases, the tendency that comes kind of projections, keep kind of fueling this, that's how it will become more of those emotions, stronger. That's why it's called the, sparks becoming the forest fires. That sparks themselves are not that harmful. It may be even useful to create a fire if you can do it properly, channeled to create the cook food and all those things. But then it can become forest fires, that if it is not channeled properly and like that, that can ruin. So how do we have the choice? That's what one of the most important things in training the mind, the elephant, training the elephant mind is one of the things, is to bring awareness to what we are feeling, what kind of impulses, thoughts, sensations, in the body and like that, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, whatever. To notice, to learn, to accept, embrace, acknowledge, and then just allow them to come and go on our end, not bringing this, oh, this is bad, this is good, what else is, but just aware that this is what I'm feeling now. What my, this is my impulse, this is the sensation in my neck, It feels tight, it feels relaxed, precious, so forth and so on. Or you may remember certain conversation, certain event, or that you may think of what's going to happen tomorrow, that what's going to happen, anything of concern, whether it's just something very narrow personally or the larger for the society, like that. Whatever comes, you're just noticing and stepping back to just allow it to come and go. This is like learning to witness our thoughts, feelings, and so forth without judging them, without fanning them further, so that we can have some space. And that space is what we need if we want to grow. That habit is what kind of constant immediate judging and like this habit is what we need to slow down. We need to creating gap means that you are not constantly just bombarding with one thing to another, but rather letting it calm. It's like letting your mind be like the vast ocean. You can use the metaphors. Our mind is like the vast ocean. In the ocean, deep down, there could be some stillness. But on the surface, if the winds are blowing and like that wind, depending on the wind, the current, there are waves. Some big, some small. Sometimes it may even become like storms when the winds are really, like the recent climate change, what we're seeing, the recent hurricanes that's happening like that never seen before, recorded history, what happened recently like that. The big winds and like that. But when the winds come, they come. Waves come into the most stillness. A turbulent lake and the peaceful lake calm. What is more radiant? What is more clear? Which one reflects the things better? It's kind of stirred, turbulent, or the calm. Our mind, when it's stirred in that storm, like the raging with this kind of the storms like that, there's no peace, there's no clarity. It ruins our life. If it is a little bit more calm, that if we are not constantly fueling, that fanning that one thing after another, creating more of the space where we can see the things more clearly, more realistically. With the mind first somewhat calmer, clearer, we can see the things a little bit more clearly. Engage instead of inappropriately, more realistically. That is what this meditation is about. So therefore, we can learn, we can do this meditation. It's like any skill, we have to begin somewhere. We have to keep doing it. Not like the 24 hours just doing that, but understanding that like any other skill, you'd spend hour, 2 hours, 15 minutes, whatever, you build that skill, and that skill eventually becomes your competency. That's what becomes your second nature. That at some point you don't need to think that how, when the ball comes here for the tennis player, that, oh, I need to put my hand there. It becomes automatic, like that. That's how. For this to become more second nature, we have to practice. Discipline is important. But to know also how to do it. That how to practice. So non-judgmental. To create that space. To not. Yes, we have bathing with all kind of possible triggers and like that. We have our dispositions and like that, both healthy and unhealthy. Now, if we were to increase the healthy ones, mitigate the unhealthy ones, then we can engage in a practice to bringing those to our awareness or paying attention to, and then learning to acknowledge without getting entangled, without getting just, reacting, but rather noticing, and to let them come and go, creating that space so that we can be not only peaceful now, but from that place of peace and clarity we can guide, navigate our lives, our behaviors, our relationships, our interaction in the more healthy ways. Make sense? Should we do this meditation briefly? Okay, let's do it. Please take a moment to find a comfortable posture. We will be sitting for about 10-12 minutes, so just see if you can find a comfortable posture. When you are adjusting this, if you have been sitting for a while, so if you feel tensions, some tightness in your back, or the heaviness in the shoulders, or the tension in the neck and so forth, please feel free to stretch your limbs, roll your shoulders, stretch the body, or the neck, and like that, wherever those tightness, stiffness, tensions that you feel in the body. By stretching and so forth, if it helps to soften some of those tensions, please do that. And then if it is possible, if it is not uncomfortable, just place the body in a position that can support our clarity and the stability of the mind. That is, by bringing the back in the upright position, just as if the invisible kind of spine above your head running through the vertebrae, you can pull a little bit to just comfortably, that's make it a bit more aligned, and just let it go, to let this rest, your upright position, rest its own accord. Placing the back in the upright position like that, see if that gives you a little bit of boost of energy. That makes you a little bit more awake and alert. With this alertness, now as you bring your attention to your body that is nicely settled in the chair or on the cushion, just bring the attention to that point of contact, of that support. Having this firm support, providing our body stable and still position. See if that gives a corresponding inner shift, a slight feeling of groundedness, settledness. Our mind alert yet settled to some degree. Let's just take a minute or so just to briefly check in with our body and mind. That is, by just bringing our attention to a couple of places in our body. It could be shoulder and chest, or the neck, face, back, other places. As you bring your attention to that first point in your body, that's, for example, chest or shoulders and like that, see what that body landscape, what that inner landscape feels like. Does it feel tight or relaxed? Hard, soft, heat, coolness? What tiny unfolding sensation? Do they feel pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? Besides these physical sensations, as we check in with other experiences, what else is occupying our mind? Are there any lingering worries or agitations? Any ruminating thoughts? disappointments, of feeling low and fatigue, or a certain sense of joy, excitement, uplifting feeling, ease. How are we feeling? What is our inner experience right now? Checking in just briefly with our body and mind, if we do notice certain tensions in the body and mind, tightness, heaviness, certain unpleasant feelings, or just worries, agitations, feeling down, let's take a couple of deep breaths to see if that helps us soften some of those tensions. As we take the first in-breath, just take slowly yet intentionally, just full in-breath. And with that, just breathing in, refreshing, rejuvenating, nourishing air rich with life-giving oxygen. Oxygen that keeps our every cell alive and us alive. As we breathe in, perhaps if it helps, just imagine you are breathing in all other qualities, properties that nourish our body and mind. At this moment, what we need, what is needed. Just all those strengths. Feel like with the incoming breath you are breathing in, letting it infuse with your whole body and mind to nourish it. And with the outgoing breath, as you exhale, just long and full exhalation. And with that, letting go of any tensions that you may have been experiencing in your body and mind. Just let the outgoing breath help us clear, thereby allowing the body and mind to settle in an unfolding sense of ease and calm. Any degree of this ease, calm that you are able to connect, just rest with that. Otherwise, take one or more, two more of this deep in-breath of nourishing air. And with the outgoing breath, releasing those tensions. Now, with this initial relaxation of the body and mind, let me invite you now for the next 4 or 5 minutes or so to see if you can just bring your attention inwards to your inner domain, just directing to your present moment, unfolding experiences in the body, the sensations, but also other just random thoughts, memories, hopes, worries, joy, excitement, whatever, in our inner world of thoughts, feelings, sensations that may be unfolding. As we just simply bring our attention to this inner domain of our thoughts, feelings, and so forth, not by choosing or selecting any particular thoughts and like that, nor blocking others, but just to see what the reality, what is unfolding right now. Anything that catches your awareness, that rises to surface level of your awareness, conscious awareness, whether it's just a physical sensation, or just random thought, or worry, or the joy, excitement, anticipation, memory. Simply just acknowledge, while you let your inner domain, the field of your mind, if you will, be like that vast ocean, with some stillness deep down. Any particular sensation, any particular thought, memory, hope, worry, joy, excitement, as you become aware, any impulses and so forth, just acknowledge and relate to that like the unfolding wave of your own mind. On our end, without judging them as good or bad, absolutely good or bad, but that's knowing that this is what is unfolding now, without rejecting them nor pursuing them, but just take a step back, so to speak, to give space for those impulses, thoughts, feelings, sensations, to just take their own course, to come and go on our end without providing or fanning with more of the winds of our own judgments as they are good, bad, and so forth, but just acknowledging what they are and just notice what they feel like, what they allowing them to come and go. As we cultivate this mindfulness of our own inner domain, the goal is not to not have thoughts, feelings, sensations, and so forth, but just simply, as we become aware, as we notice, bring awareness to those unfolding thoughts, feelings, and so forth, to see if we can create that space, if we can just pause our judging, just acknowledge and witness what is unfolding, allowing them to come and go. At times you may notice a certain agitation, certain worry, certain memory. With that equanimity, with that non-judging, acceptance, acknowledgement on our end without pushing away, without holding on to them, as we just give them space to come and go, a certain agitation, worry, may gradually subside into the stillness of our own mind, just like when the wind subsides, the waves gradually subside into the stillness of the waters. In this way, as we simply witness what is unfolding as best as we can, without judging, without fanning with further judgments. As there are certain worries and so forth, as they subside, you can just rest your awareness in that stillness, in that gap between what subsided and before another thought, feeling, and so forth, we become aware. Yet at another thought, feeling, sensation, memory, random thoughts, as we notice, we become aware, just acknowledge again, relating to them like the unfolding waves when the conditions are there. Without judging, without pushing away, without holding on to them. Just allowing them to come and go. Simply paying attention to what is unfolding on our inner domain and just acknowledging without judging. Say if you notice a certain shifts in your inner domain, even in the sensations, If your chest feel any feeling that it is more smoother, more relaxed, certain tenderness, warm. Does the shoulders feel any lighter, face any softer? And internally, do we feel any little bit, any shift towards peace, calmness? Does it feel pleasant, feel more comfortable? Any just slightest changes in this direction, if we notice, just know that these are inner skills. When our body and mind are in certain regulated state, not in turmoil, not in constant raging or in turmoil, this really means that our nervous system, our body and mind is more regulated. Our mind, emotions more regulated. A state of body and mind that we can say that it's more in homeostatic state, more in the state of resilience or well-being, where we feel better, we can function or think better, we can function better, and we can be aware of our surrounding, other people, a little bit more better, and we can relate to others better. With practice, this ability can grow. And eventually this can become more abiding, more sustained, with which we can benefit not only us, but also those around us through our own actions, through our own decisions, through our interactions. We can contribute to those who are in our lives, our family members, co-workers, in our community perhaps. In some ways that ripple effects can grow, that can have some contribution to larger society. So let's take a moment to dedicate this practice that we just did and any benefits arising from this towards greater purposes for peace, healing, harmony and happiness for all beings. And let's conclude by setting an intention to extend these insights, any degree of inner cultivation that we did beyond this cushion, beyond this formal session, bringing in our everyday life. As we go about our life, just now and then, just pausing for a moment, just to briefly check in with our body and mind, how we are feeling, what are our sensations, how our body feels, what are our inner. If we notice ourselves in those moments in a dysregulated states, emotionally feeling kind of agitated, high or worried and feeling down and hopeless and like that, perhaps we can take a moment in those moments to just perhaps take a couple of deep breaths and just to sit for a few seconds, perhaps a minute or so, just paying attention to what is unfolding without judging, allowing them to come and go. In that way, it's bringing our body and mind to some degree, our nervous system, the body and mind, to a little bit more regulated state. It's through these micro moments of adjusting our body and mind, our emotions, bringing this in the zone of well-being or the resilience, more regulated state, how this can become more and more the enduring states of our body and mind, contributing to our own flourishing and the flourishing of others. Thank you. Have a great day.